welcome everyone to the Polity Primer series of Drishti IAS. My name is Pragya and today we are going to discuss a very important topic that is in news recently. So you all know, in a landmark judgment, the Supreme Court has upheld the abrogation of Article 370 from the Jammu and Kashmir. Not only this, the Supreme Court has also said that the human rights violation in the Kashmir valleys should be probed and has talked about specifically constituting a truth and a reconciliation commission. In this discussion, we'll firstly see what is a truth and a reconciliation commission. We are also going to analyze which countries have had such commissions in the past. We are also going to study about what kind of human right violation in Jammu and Kashmir have happened. We are also going to study about the National Human Rights Commission. So we are also going to trying to figure it out that what is the need for constituting a truth and a reconciliation commission when we already have an NHRC. And in the end, we are going to see a practice question for your prelims examination and a practice question for your mains examination. So if I talk about the background of our today's topic, so as I was saying to you this before also, that in a landmark judgment, the Supreme Court has upheld the abrogation of Article 370 from the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. But the Supreme Court has also talked about that there are human rights violations. There is an intergenerational trauma in the people of the Jammu and Kashmir, and that is why it has talked about constituting a truth and a reconciliation commission. And we will study about what is a truth and reconciliation commission and what is its purpose. So let us proceed to study and know more about the truth and a reconciliation commission. Okay. So if I talk about the truth and a reconciliation commission, so it is made up of two words. Firstly, the truth plus reconciliation. Reconciliation. Okay. So firstly, we need to analyze what the truth is. The people should have voices so that finally, out of the false narratives, the truth can come out. And then we need to talk about reconciliation of the people amongst themselves. Okay. So in his judgment, Justice S.K. Kaul recommended the setting up of an impartial truth and a reconciliation committee to probe and report on the human rights violation in the Jammu and Kashmir, both by the state and non-state actors since the 1980s. What happened in the 1980s? The very famous insurgency happened in the Kashmir valley in the 1980s, which has forced the Kashmiri Pandits to move out of the valley, which has forced the exodus of the Kashmiri Pandits. And that is why the Supreme Court has specifically outlined that yes, we need an impartial truth and a reconciliation commission so that the people who were forced to leave the Kashmir valley during the insurgency are accepted back with dignity. Okay. So in the epilogue to his judgment, Justice Kaul said that if the valley of Kashmir carried a historical burden and the people residing there have been victims of conflict since decades altogether. So if I talk about what is a truth and a reconciliation commission, what is its definition? So basically, it is also known as a Truth and a Justice Commission or simply Truth Commission, is an official mechanism to not just acknowledge but also reveal wrongdoings by a government or sometimes non-state actors or combatants so that conflicts of the past can be addressed and resolved. So what this commission will actually do, it will sit together with the people. It will try to heal their intergenerational trauma. It will try to talk to the people that what actually happened, because there are many false narratives that are going in the media. What should have been done, what is going on. So we are here, we don't know, we basically do not know the ground reality situation. And this ground reality situation maybe will be uncovered when we'll set up a Truth and a Reconciliation Commission. Okay, so moving forward, the Truth and a Reconciliation Commission is focused on the past rather than an ongoing event. So if I talk about the Kashmir Valley, it has a very violent past. Okay, there have been instances of insurgency, mainly because the insurgent groups demand an Azad Kashmir. They do not want to stay with rather India or Pakistan, but the Pakistan is also trying to infiltrate in Kashmir. So all of these past events have resulted into various human rights violations as well. So if we establish a Truth and a Reconciliation Commission, it should be focused on healing the past rather than the ongoing events. Okay, it investigates a pattern of events that took place over a period of time it engages directly and broadly with the affected population, gathering information on their experiences. So basically they will also talk to the Kashmiri Pandits, and they will also try to figure it out. If I talk about Jammu and Kashmir Valley, that what led them to leave the valley, but what led them to flee the valley and never come back. So because Jammu and Kashmir is also their home also, na. So the Truth and the Reconciliation Commission will actually try to find out what kind of experiences they had during the insurgency times and why are they so reluctant to return to the Kashmir Valley. Okay. And Truth and Reconciliation Commission is a temporary body with the aim of concluding with a final report and is officially authorized or empowered by the state under review. So basically, as Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul has pointed out, that it should not be a criminal body. It should not be a criminal body. Okay, rather it should be a body that is promoting dialogue, because lots of problems can be solved by just having a impartial dialogue with the people. So that is why the Truth and the Reconciliation Commission is important. Now let us see which countries have had such commissions in the past. So these Truth and Reconciliation Commissions are not new to the world. Countries such as South Africa, Canada, Australia, and if I talk about the neighbors of India, then Sri Lanka and Nepal already constituted such commissions to heal, to bring the people closer together, to heal the past trauma, to reintegrate their states into a fully one state. Okay, so this is what was happening around the world also. So now let us see the example of South Africa. What happened in the South Africa? There was this policy known as apartheid. You might have heard about this in the history, apartheid. And what is this apartheid policy? Division of white people and the black people. In very simple terms, I am explaining this to you because this topic is not my forte, but yes, if I talk about apartheid, it is simply the division between white people and the black people, and it promoted racism in South Africa. Okay, so in South Africa, what happened was the first post-apartheid government of President Nelson Mandela, the first black president of South Africa, okay, established a Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 1995 with the aim of uncovering the truth of human rights violations during the decades of apartheid and to heal the country and bring about reconciliation with its history. So, in South Africa, the blacks were facing various human rights violations. They had to be confined to one area. They were not having access to the government resources. The white people were more privileged than the black people, and that is the policy of apartheid, was that yes, we need to divide the people into black people and white people, and definitely the white people were favored over the black people. So when Nelson Mandela became the president of South Africa, he promoted this Truth and Reconciliation Commission so that the past could heal itself. The people could come together, they could reconcile. Okay. Moving forward, the TRC was focused on putting together information and evidence from both the victims and the perpetrators of violence rather than on prosecution and punishment for crimes. So in South Africa also, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was not a criminal body, rather than it was a dialogue delivery body. It tried to talk to both sides rather than, focusing just on the victims. It also tried to have a dialogue with the perpetrators of the violence, so that they could understand that what kind of mentality they were having and how do they need to heal that mentality so that such incidences cannot happen in the future. Okay. So, 5 volumes of the Commission's report were released in October 1998 and 2 subsequent volumes in March 2003. So, the South Africa had a very successful Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Now, talking about Canada. Okay. So, Canada is also a country which had established a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Okay. So, the Canadian Truth and Reconciliation Commission provided those directly or indirectly affected by the legacy of the Indian residential school systems, famously known as the boarding schools. So, what happened was the children who were displaced from the original families were asked to share their experiences. So, they were the victim of this Indian residential school system. So, this Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada examined more than 6,500 witnesses. Okay, and helped in healing those who were suffering from this Indian residential school system. Around many children were interviewed and asked to share their stories and experiences. Okay, so between 2007 and 2015, the government of Canada provided about $72 million to support the truth and the reconciliations work. It was so important for them to heal the past traumas. Okay, so generally when a country is suffering from past trauma, they usually constitute this truth and reconciliation commission. Now let us think about what are the human rights, or let us discuss about what are the human rights violations that have taken place in the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, so for decades the people of Jammu and Kashmir have faced grave abuse of their rights to physical and mental integrity. Every other citizen in India is having some of the fundamental rights guaranteed to the by the Indian Constitution. Okay, but what is happening with the people in Valley? They are deprived of their right to freedom of speech and expression. Right to freedom of speech and expression. Freedom of speech and expression. Okay, so they are deprived of their right. There is a curtailment of their freedom of speech and expression. Article 21 says a right to life does not mean a mere animalistic life. It means right to live with human dignity. But look at the life of the people in Valley. They live a so fearful life. Okay, they are deprived of education. They are deprived of internet time, and again they are so cut off from the society. So they have faced grave abuse of their rights to physical and mental integrity, including arbitrary detention and unlawful killings, very common in the Valley of Kashmir. They are subjected to arbitrary detention. In fact, most of the regional leaders allege that they have been placed under house arrest. Okay, and they also faced extrajudicial killings. Okay, and to their freedoms of expression or of movement and from discrimination. They are often very discriminated. Ask if you have any known contact from the Kashmir Valley, any known student or any known colleague, ask them how difficult it is for them to obtain the Indian passport. Just ask them their apathy and they will tell you what is actually happening in the Kashmir Valley. Okay, so these gross human rights violations are there since the 1980s, as pointed out by the Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul. So what is happening is the insurgents who are against the Indian administration, they ask the people of Jammu and Kashmir to revolt for their azadi. That means they do not want accession to India, they do not want to be governed by the Indian administration, and neither do they want to be governed by Pakistan. How Pakistan is taking advantage of this situation? That it is sending its soldier or the spies in the local tribal people by making them look like the local people. So that is why the army had to be in place to protect the national security. And the army, after the placing of army also, the human rights violations are occurring, because army has no business to govern the state. It has no business of enforcing law in the state. But yes, there are grave human rights violations, and time and again we see in news that yes, the people of the valley are suffering. Okay, the situation only exacerbated for them following the abrogation of Article 370 in 2019. Although we say that yes, the stone pelting incidents have decreased, there the ground reality is very different, and that is why we are having this discussion, and we are talking about establishing a truth and a reconciliation commission, so as to analyze that yes, what is the ground reality, because the media is definitely not portraying a true picture. You cannot even blame the government also. What will the government do? It has to fight many of the militant, it has to fight the insurgent people who are, tending to harm the security and national integrity of India. So that is why they have to place military in the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. So, but this is leading to various human rights violations as well. As per the report of Amnesty International, it has documented the continued repression of rights in Jammu and Kashmir since the change in status of the region in 2019. through abrogation of Article 370 and has called for the Indian government to end the use of unlawful measures and unjust barriers impeding the exercise of various human rights. But we cannot rely on this report completely. The government is also right in its position. What will you do if your own people are revolting against the Indian administration? So the law also says that yes, 100 people should be killed, but one innocent person should not suffer. What will the government also do? It is facing insurgency by its own people. In fact, the government says that yes, the situation has improved and this could really be uncovered. Like the real factual situation can only be uncovered if there is an impartial body that is informing the people also and the government also of various issues that are going on. Okay. A UN expert has also demanded to stop the human rights violation in the Kashmir. Okay, so the human rights violation in Kashmir is happening, it is a reality, but to what extent, that should be figured it out. Okay, we should not rely solely on the media reports and the reports by international organizations. The government can also not be blamed fully for this. Okay, the government is trying to protect the national security and national interest. So this is basically an ethical dilemma that you cannot even blame the government, you cannot even blame the people. Okay, so a mutual solution should be there between the government and the people, and that solution is not in the criminal proceeding, is not by penalizing the people, is rather by having a dialogue with the people. Okay, if we really want to integrate Jammu and Kashmir truly into India. Okay, now let us discuss that why do we need a separate Truth and the Reconciliation Commission when we already have an NHRC in place. Okay, so NHRC of India is an independent statutory body established on 12 October 1993 as per the provisions of the Protection of the Human Rights Act 1993, later amended in 2006. So there was this Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Then there are Paris Principles on human rights, Paris Principles. Then there is Human Rights Day, Human Rights Day, okay, which is celebrated on 10 December every year. So all of these led to the formation of the NHRC in India also. Not only NHRC, there are state human rights commissions as well. So basically, it is the watchdog of human rights in the country, that is the rights related to life, liberty, equality and dignity of the individual, guaranteed by the Indian Constitution or embodied in the international covenants and enforceable by courts in India. So basically, NHRC is responsible for seeing any kind of violation of human rights are happening across the country. Okay, but NHRC is not a foolproof body. It has many limitations to its powers. Okay, and let us discuss what are these limitations on the NHRC's powers. Okay, so if I talk about the limitations, there is a strict timeline of 1 year. That means the NHRC cannot prove any human rights violation after 1 year since it has occurred, and that is why these human rights violations often go unnoticed. Okay, so the functions of the commission are mainly recommendatory in nature. It is lacking any statutory or legal force. So once it is recommendatory in nature, no one is bound to follow it, and that is why it is not followed. Okay, it has no power to punish the violators of human rights, nor to award any relief, including monetary relief, to the victim. Although it has the power to act as a civil court, but in what cases is the NHRC exercises its powers remains very unclear, because it has no power to punish the violators. It is completely dependent on the central government and the state government in case of the SHRC. Okay. It has limited role, powers and jurisdiction with respect to the violation of human rights by the members of the armed forces. So, yes, there are violations of human rights by the member of the armed forces, and we continue reading them in the newspapers also. But NHRC is not empowered to act on the human rights violation by the armed forces. Okay. Some other limitations include that it is not empowered to act when human rights violation through private parties take place. So we were saying in the Kashmir valleys that yes, human rights violations by the state authorities as well as the non-state actors should be probed. So NHRC, if we talk about why do we need a specific body like the Truth and the Reconciliation Commission, because NHRC is not empowered to act when the human rights violation take place through the private players. Okay. NHRC does not have any mechanism of investigation. In majority cases, it asks the concerned central and the state governments to investigate the violation of human rights, and that is what is happening, that if the government is violating it, why will it investigate? So NHRC has no independent power of investigation. In fact, if a human rights violation occur in the states, the NHRC cannot do anything, the SHRC cannot do anything in that regard. It can just ask the central and the respective state governments to act, but in most of the cases they do not act. Okay. NHRC can only make recommendation without the power to enforce decision. You have given every such powers, but it is actually quite of no use. It is only recommendatory in nature. It cannot, enforce its own decision. It is quite dependent on the central and the state government, and that is why we need a separate body, especially in sensitive areas like Manipur and Kashmir, to find out the ground realities, okay, to find out what is actually happening, which the media is not showing us. So that is why I am saying that yes, we need a separate body even if we have NHRC, because NHRC is like a toothless animal in India. It has various kind of limitations, especially in the case of armed forces. Okay, so with this we come to a conclusion of our today's discussion. We have seen what is a Truth and a Reconciliation Commission. We have also seen the countries which have constituted these kind of commissions in the past. We have also analyzed that what are the human rights violation that is going on the Kashmir Valley. Okay. Then we have also seen that though we have NHRC, we still need an impartial Truth and a Reconciliation Commission due to the limitations that is being imposed on the powers of the NHRC. Now let us see a practice question for your prelims examination. So the question is, consider the following statements. Your statement number 1 is, Truth and Reconciliation Commission investigates human rights violations. Okay. Your statement number 2 is, NHRC is a constitutional body. Your statement number 3 is, NHRC established in conformity with the Paris Principles. Which of the following statements given above are correct? Your options are, option A is 1 and 2 only. Option B is 2 and 3 only. Option C is 1 and 3 only. And option D is 1, 2 and 3. Kindly drop your answers in the comment box below. Now let us analyze a practice question for your mains examination. So the question is NHRC toothless in India? Comment. So you'll introduce what is NHRC. You will write that yes, it is a statutory body, it is not a constitutional body, and it has been established to adhere to the Paris Principles on human rights. Okay. Then you will write the various limitations on the powers of the NHRC, and you will say that yes, a reform has to be made in the NHRC because it has a lot of limitations on its powers and jurisdiction. So you can conclude holistically that yes, the way forward can be, you need to bring amendments, you need to make NHRC as a constitutional body rather than a statutory body, and definitely you need to pay more attention to the human rights violation, and you need to give NHRC more independence of power to independently investigate the human rights violation rather than being completely dependent on the central and the state government. So you can conclude very holistically. I hope this session was insightful for you. If you have any feedback regarding the session, kindly drop it in the comment box below. If you liked today's discussion and found it to be helpful, kindly like the video and subscribe to our channel for more such updates. Thank you.